You know that specific kind of modern heartbreak, right? It's a Tuesday, you've just spent the entire weekend tailoring your resume. You've written a cover letter that you think is professional, but also, just charming enough to show you're a real person. You hit submit, you feel that little rush of hope, you go to put the kettle on, and
Yeah.
before the water has even started to boil, your phone buzzes.
The notification of doom.
Exactly. You look down, and there it is. Thank you for your interest, but unfortunately, it's been 3 minutes, maybe 4.
Uh-huh.
And you're just standing there thinking, did anyone even open the file?
It's the 3-minute rejection, and it burns because, logically, it's physically impossible for a human being to have opened your PDF, read your opening, considered your skills, and then typed out a thoughtful no in that amount of time.
It feels like a slap in the face. It feels personal. But here's the reality check we're diving into today. That immediate no, it didn't come from an overworked HR manager who hates your font choice. It came from a machine.
That's right. And that machine is what we're calling the hidden gatekeeper.
Which brings us to the stack of research we're digging into. We're anchoring this whole conversation on a really fascinating and frankly kind of terrifying piece by Johan Steyn. It's called The Hidden Gatekeeper, AI in Graduate Hiring.
And Steyn is a heavy hitter in the world of AI ethics and, the future of work. What makes this piece so urgent is the context he's writing from. He's not just looking at Silicon Valley. He's looking at this whole thing through the lens of places like South Africa markets, where youth unemployment is already a massive crisis. So when these algorithms get it wrong, it's not just an inconvenience, it's a livelihood issue.
So the mission for this deep dive is pretty clear. We're not just here to complain that robots are taking our jobs. We need to understand how the robot actually reads your resume. We're going to look at the weird, sneaky biases these systems have, the legal crackdown that's finally starting to happen here in 2026, and crucially, if you're applying for a job right now, what you can actually do about it.
Because if you don't understand the mechanics of the lock, you're never going to find the key.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. Why is this happening? I mean, I get that big companies are busy, but just handing over the keys to software, it feels like a massive abdication of responsibility.
It all comes down to a brutal math problem, just the sheer scale. Think about a standard entry-level role at some multinational company. 10 years ago, they might get a couple hundred applications. Today, with easy apply buttons, remote work, AI tools helping candidates blast out resumes, they get thousands.
Right. It's a flood.
Steyn points out that if your HR team is, say, 5 people, and you get 10,000 PDFs for one grad program, the math just breaks. It is physically impossible to give every single one a fair read. So companies turn to automation, not necessarily to be evil, but because they were just drowning in data.
Okay, so the bots are bailing out the humans. A survival tactic. But when we say AI in hiring, what are we actually talking about? Is it just a glorified keyword search for Python?
It used to be, but Steyn details a much more sophisticated and complicated toolkit. It's usually a stack of 3 different things working together. First up, you have the CV parser.
The parser. So this is the thing that eats your resume.
Essentially, yeah. Its only job is to strip mine your document. It takes that beautiful PDF you spent hours on with the nice columns, the specific fonts, and it just rips the text out and dumps it into a standardized spreadsheet.
Which explains why half the time you upload your resume, the site then asks you to manually type in your work history anyway. The parser failed.
Precisely. The parser is trying to make messy human data readable for a computer. But, and here's the kicker, Steyn points out that these parsers are notoriously bad with creative layouts. If you use columns or graphics or little icons for your skills, the parser might just turn all of that into gibberish.
So you could be the most qualified person, but because you made your resume look modern, the parser just deletes your experience.
You become a blank row in the database, or a row full of wingdings. And that's just step 1. Step 2 is the inference engine. This is where it gets a little sci-fi. These systems don't just look for keywords. They try to infer skills based on the context.
How does that work? Like, give me an example.
Okay, say you write, I built a customized WordPress plugin for a client. The system sees that and infers, okay, this person likely knows PHP, they know HTML, they know CSS, even if you didn't list those acronyms.
That actually sounds kind of helpful. It's like it's reading between the lines.
It can be, but it can also make these wild leaps of logic. It's all based on probability. It might see team lead at a fast food job and infer you have management experience, which is great. But it might also see an engineering degree and fail to infer any soft skills because it thinks it's all just technical. It's just guessing.
And then step 3.
Step 3 is the ranking system. This is the algorithm that takes those, say, 5,000 applicants, scores them, and then spits out a top 10 list for the hiring manager.
And that's the moment of truth. If you're number 11, do you even get seen?
Usually no, and that's the whole efficiency argument they sell to companies. We give you the best matches instantly. But Steyn's counterpoint, and this is the core of his whole critique, is that it creates this invisible barrier for the applicant.
It's the finality of it that gets me. If a human rejects you, you can imagine they maybe had a bad day. But when an algorithm ranks you 4,000th, that feels like an objective measurement of your worth.
And that is the dangerous illusion. We tend to trust computers. We think, math is neutral. If the computer says I'm bad, I must be bad. But Steyn calls this the black box of bias.
Okay, let's double-click on that, because this is the part that makes people really angry, and for good reason. How can a computer be biased? It doesn't have feelings or a political opinion.
No, it doesn't. But what it does have is training data. Steyn highlights this uncomfortable truth. AI does not understand human potential. It detects patterns in history.
So it's just looking at who the company hired in the past.
Exactly. Imagine a tech company that for the last 10 years has mostly hired men from 3 specific universities. That becomes the data set. The AI analyzes that data to learn what a successful employee looks like.
And it learns that success looks like a dude from that one specific college.
Correct. So when a resume comes in from a woman or someone from a different school or just a different background, the pattern doesn't match. The AI doesn't think, I should discriminate. It just thinks, this data point deviates from the success model. High risk, down rank.
It's just replicating the choices of the humans who came before it, but at lightning speed and massive scale, it's automating the status quo.
And it does this through proxies. This is a concept Steyn explains really well. The algorithm might be legally forbidden from looking at race or gender directly, but it finds other things that correlate with them.
Like what? What's a proxy in this context?
Zip codes are a classic one. If the algorithm prefers candidates who live near the office or in good neighborhoods, it might inadvertently filter out candidates from lower income areas, which can often correlate with race.
That is wild. So you're not rejected because of who you are explicitly. You're rejected because of your address, but the result is exactly the same.
Steyn lists a few of these. University names are a big one, filtering for prestige over capability. But another one that really hurts recent graduates is employment gaps.
Oh, the dreaded gap.
A human might look at a 6-month gap and think, oh, they were traveling or caring for a sick parent. There's context. An algorithm just sees a deviation from the pattern, gap equals risk, and your score goes down.
It penalizes you for having a life.
It can even penalize your writing style. Steyn notes that some of these tools analyze your syntax. If you don't write in that standard corporate norm, which is often very Western, very white collar, you get flagged as a poor communicator.
Which is a perfect segue to the voice problem. This was a detail in the source material that I found honestly dystopian. We're not just talking about text anymore, are we?
No, we're talking about the rise of these automated video interviews, where you record yourself answering questions and an AI analyzes the footage. Steyn references a report from Axios from back in November 2025 that is just incredibly damning.
What did they find?
They found that these AI systems significantly struggle with non-standard accents.
And we have to remember, Steyn is writing this with South Africa in mind.
That's the critical context. In a country like South Africa or India or Nigeria or even parts of the U.S. accent, diversity is the norm. There are dozens of ways to speak English. But if the AI was trained on a data set of, say, standard American broadcasters,
It literally can't understand you.
it misinterprets your words. Or even worse, it analyzes your micro-expressions and decides that your tone sounds hesitant or unsure just because your cadence is different from its training data.
That is horrifying. You're being judged on your communication skills by a machine that only speaks one specific dialect of corporate American.
It becomes a huge hidden disadvantage. As Steyn points out, we are potentially filtering out brilliant people simply because they don't sound like the people who are already there.
So this paints a pretty bleak picture. We have robots that shred our formatting, judge our zip codes, and hate our accents.
Yeah.
Is this just the way it is now, or is there any pushback?
Well, it's starting to. Steyn points to a pretty significant shift that's happened over the last year or so. We're moving out of the Wild West era of AI into the regulation era.
What do the headlines say?
Steyn cites AP News, which reported a major pivot in civil rights enforcement. Government agencies are now specifically targeting algorithmic bias.
Meaning what, exactly?
It means that companies can no longer use the black box excuse. For years, the defense was basically, we didn't discriminate, the vendor software did it, we don't even know how it works.
The robot made me do it defense.
Right, and that's stopping. New regulations are making it clear that if you buy the tool, you own the bias. The Washington Post covered how, in the U.S., it's actually state and local laws driving this. New York City, for example, passed rules that require bias audits for these tools.
So if you use AI to hire, you have to actually prove it's not biased.
Effectively, yes. You have to show your work. Reuters highlighted that this is creating a really messy legal landscape where state rules are much stricter than federal ones.
I mean, that sounds like a nightmare for the companies, though.
It is. Steyn cites the Financial Times describing it as organizational chaos. You have these global companies trying to hire everywhere, and suddenly they have to navigate dozens of different AI liability laws. It's a huge compliance risk.
Good.
Why do you say good?
Because risk gets the C-suite's attention. As long as it was just unfair to applicants, nobody really cared. But now that it's a liability, maybe they'll actually fix it.
That's a very cynical but probably very accurate take. Risk does drive change. But while the lawyers are fighting, I want to pivot back to the people caught in the middle. Steyn talks about the human cost, and it's heavy.
It really is. We talk about efficiency and scale, but for the person sitting at home, this is deeply personal. He uses a phrase that stuck with me, a corrosive mix of anxiety and cynicism.
It's the cynicism that worries me most. If you apply for 50 jobs and get rejected instantly by 50 robots, you don't just think, I need to improve my resume. You start to think the game is rigged.
And the worst part is the silence. Steyn calls it the wall of silence.
Yes. In the old days, you might call the office for feedback. Even a vague answer was a human interaction. With an algorithm, you can't phone the server, you can't ask the inference engine why it didn't like your project.
You're just shouting into the void.
You are. And Steyn notes, we are doing this to young graduates. We're training a whole generation to believe the job market is arbitrary and cold. That has real long-term psychological effects.
It kills confidence, which is the one thing you need to get a job.
Exactly. It creates a generation that feels powerless before they even get a first paycheck.
Okay, I promise we wouldn't just leave everyone in a pit of despair. We've covered the problem, the bias, the toll. Now we need solutions. Steyn does outline some actionable advice here.
He does, and he breaks it down for everyone, the companies, the regulators, and, the applicants.
Let's start with the employers. If any hiring managers are listening, what's the message for them?
First step is just radical honesty. Steyn argues, if you use these tools, say so. Put it right in the job description. We use an automated system to scan for X, Y, and Z. Transparency builds trust. If I know a robot is scanning my resume for keywords, I'm going to write it differently than if I think a human is reading for nuance. Don't trick people.
And surely don't just leave it on autopilot.
Correct. The human-in-the-loop idea is non-negotiable. Steyn insists that humans have to review the results, especially the maybe pile and the borderline rejections. You can't let the machine make the final call on someone's livelihood.
What about the policymakers?
Well, we mentioned the audits, but Steyn has a specific note for South Africa and other emerging markets. He basically says, don't just copy-paste the EU AI Act or U.S. laws.
Why not?
Because the context is different. The biases in South African data historical legacies, language diversity, are unique. You need regulations that understand the local reality, not just imported rules. An employment gap in Johannesburg might mean something very different than one in Berlin.
Okay, now for the part everyone's been waiting for, I'm a candidate, or I'm a parent of a graduate who is banging their head against this wall. How do I beat the bot?
This is where Steyn throws a bit of a curveball. His first piece of advice is, do not try to game the system.
Wait, really? I've seen all those TikToks. Copy the job description in white text so the bot sees it, but the human doesn't. You're saying don't do that.
Do not do that. Steyn is very clear. The algorithms are smarter than that now. Many of them are trained to flag anomalous formatting or keyword snuffing as spam, that invisible text. To the parser, it just looks like a block of junk.
So playing games just gets you disqualified. It marks you as a bad actor.
Exactly. It's super high risk for a very low reward.
So what's the actual strategy?
It's boring, but it works. A skills-based approach. Remember the parser we talked about?
The one that hates columns and fancy fonts.
Right. Feed the parser what it wants. A clean, simple layout. Standard fonts. Arial. Calibri. No weird tables. And focus heavily on concrete skills. Don't write fluff like, I am a passionate thought leader.
Save the poetry for the cover letter.
Or for your diary. The bot wants data. Right. proficient in Python, managed budgets of $50, certified in project management. Use the vocabulary of the job description, but use it honestly.
Make it easy for the machine to infer the right things.
Exactly, and then prove it. Steyn emphasizes evidence. Because eventually, you might get past the gatekeeper to a human. You need a portfolio, GitHub links, a personal website. The machine gets you in the room. The evidence gets you the job.
But he also mentioned something about human channels.
This is the most effective way to bypass the bot entirely. Networking.
I know. Everyone hates networking. It feels so transactional.
I know, it's awkward. But in 2026, a referral link from an employee is gold dust. Most of these systems have a specific flag for referrals. If you come in through a referral link, you often skip that initial harsh filtering. You go into a separate pile.
So the old saying, "it's who you know," is now literally true in the code.
It is encoded into the software's priority settings.
There was one last point on mindset that I think is really important to close on, because this whole process can feel so defeating.
Yes. Steyn advises candidates to fundamentally reframe rejection.
How so?
You have to understand that a rejection from an algorithm is often a system failure, not a capability failure.
I love that distinction. Unpack that a bit.
Just because the machine said no, it doesn't mean you're not qualified. It just means you didn't fit the pattern that specific model was looking for on that specific day. Maybe your keyword density was off by 2%. Maybe the parser choked on your bullet points. It's statistical, not personal.
That is actually very comforting. Don't let a spreadsheet determine your self-worth.
Exactly.
So pulling this all together, we're in this massive transition period. We have this tension between the need for corporate efficiency and the need for human fairness.
That is the battle of the next decade, efficiency versus fairness. Steyn's core philosophy, the big takeaway, is that AI should be decision support, not decision replacement.
It helps the human decide. It doesn't decide for the human.
Precisely. The danger isn't the technology itself. We aren't Luddites. These tools are here to stay. The danger is the erosion of accountability. When we can just point at the software and say, the computer said no, we stop taking responsibility for the society we're building.
Which leaves us with that final thought.
Steyn leaves us with a provocative question that I think every manager, and frankly every job seeker, should chew on. If an algorithm shapes a young person's career prospects, who is responsible for ensuring it is fair, explainable, and open to challenge?
Is it the coder in Silicon Valley, the CEO in Johannesburg, the HR manager? Or is it nobody?
That is the question we have to answer, because right now, in too many places, the answer is nobody, and that is not sustainable.
And on that note, something to think about the next time you hit submit. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Until next time.